Hello, I am the Gib, and welcome to Localization and You, the segment dedicated to helping you make some beautiful text. This segment will be going from the basics of setting up your files to creating text functions that may be unnecessary for your mod. We get a lot of questions related to localization formatting and file structure on the co-op. If you are here to get answers for your events, you may want to focus on the first half of this segment. The first step to creating localization for your mod is file structure. You will want to grab an application capable of editing and formatting YAML files. We will be using Visual Studio for this tutorial as the free CW Tools add-on has great coloring for loc files. There is not much in the way of a proper folder structure for localization for Jomini, but please save everyone else some time and set up a coherent folder structure. Create the base folder localization and inside the name of the language of your choosing. In here, you will create your localization file. Start by naming the file in a short yet descriptive style, then end with the text L_language. Here we're using English. Localization files are .yml, so we want to declare that here too. L_language can be used anywhere in the file name, but please put it at the end so your files are more easily read. Now we have two more things to set up before we can start writing. We will declare the language at the top, similar to the file name but with a colon. Next, we should resave the file in UTF-8 BOM. In Visual Studio, there's a button in the bottom right that should just say ASCII or UTF-8. We will click that and then save with encoding, UTF-8 BOM. For Notepad users, there's a top bar drop-down menu for encoding. Now this file is ready for use with localization. It is important to note that if you are replacing localization from another mod or the base game, to create a replace folder. Any loc keys in this folder will override localization loaded by the game. Do not make regular files in here, they will not work properly. To set up text to be displayed, we want to define a localization key. A key is a string of plain text letters that we can reuse in script to state what text we want there. So here's our loc key. We will then write our text in quotes as shown here. Every programmer's first string. It is important to note that developers use numbers after the loc key to state the number of revisions they have made. As shown here, the numbers will actually ruin color formatting for UML files and should be avoided for clarity. We got the files down, but there is another thing we must grab before we can get down into writing. No good story is complete without the names of its characters. To grab those, we need to step our toes into UI modding. If that has struck fear into your hearts, do not worry. All localization is UI modding in the Jomini world. To get started, we are going to want a shortcut for a game of our choice. Open up the shortcuts properties, and we're going to add -debug and -develop_mode to the target. After opening up your shortcut and loading into the game, if you press the tilt key, you will open up the console for the game. Type in dump data types as shown, and we will now have a new documents folder. In here, we are looking for data types, and for CK3 there are 5 files. Opening up one of them will show you collections of promotes and functions. Promotes are used similar to scope chaining in regular game script. Each piece of text has a data type attached to it, character, title, artifact. So we can use getHolder to grab the character data off of a title. Functions will typically end the data chain and grab or display the relevant data off the data we chain to. Most relevant in this case is getFirstName, which will display the character's first name. Here I created a test event for us to write into. Our look keys for this event follow a basic structure. Name of the event, T for title of the event, description for the main text, and A for option 1, as there is only one option for this event. This event is a test, so we will be using Hello World for the title. We can actually substitute our previous look key by wrapping the key in $signs as shown. This key will then reuse the already defined text if you wanted to save some time. For our body, we have found the cutest cat in the world, the localization cat Tay. So we want to let the event player know they have found her. Here we're going to use the get first name data type. In events, we can actually use event scopes as the initial promote for data functions. I have already set up the event root scope to be cat finder. So we will type in left bracket cat finder dot get first name right bracket. The brackets will cover the data function and let the game system know that it's a UI function. Lastly, we can only say meow back, so that will be our only option. Logging back into our debug game, we can open up the console again to test out our new event. Viola, you have mastered the fundamentals and now can make text for 99% of modding ideas out there. Moving along to the fun stuff you can do. Many veteran modders have found the text formatting file with formatting shortcuts. Using L to underline Tay, we can put better emphasis on the word by wrapping it with the hashtag L and ending with hashtag exclamation point. But did you also know that there's ways to make clickable text and tooltippable text without any real text formatting by using the same method, as long as we can grab the ID of the scope? What? Here I saved the character to a scope and used the function getID to pull the character for the clickable function. Did you also know we can use the same method to change fonts? By editing the fonts.font file in the fonts folder, we can add defined fonts for given languages and create a usable name for a font for select styles. In this case, we will want to type hashtag font : and our font name like so. Any letter that is supported by Unicode mapping is a valid letter as long as the font supports it. If you are doing a translation with right to left cursive script like Arabic, you may also need to regenerate the fonts with different file types. Downloading the Google fonts will not work as cursive letters need to be typed in manually left to right as shown here. One of the more difficult parts of localization modding is figuring out what data type to start from to do custom text. For this issue, we know so far as the way to handle it is through what CK3 calls flavorization. However, flavorization doesn't cover vassal contracts. We can open up the localization file for flavorization and see if we can find a data valid type there. Thankfully, character in capital letters seems to be valid. Vassal contracts still can't be accessed with data functions. Thankfully, there are two great ways to get into regular script for checking game state. Here we can use the custom function. Custom will wrap the name of your custom loc in parentheses and apostrophes. Inside our customizable localization folder, we define the name, choose a scope type for the function, here being character as that's where we're coming from on the UI side. Each loc key will then be bracketed with text, the trigger with our valid triggers that we want. In this case, it's the March contract, and a defined loc key to use. We can also replace the trigger area with a fallback equals yes check, so that some sort of text will always be displayed. I want to reiterate again to please use the replace folder correctly if you're going to be replacing single keys from the vanilla game, as we did here. For another great use of regular script, we are actually going to take a dive into fixing a very popular mod on the workshop. For the safety of the devs, I went ahead and edited much of the text as to not give away what mod this is. This mod has gone through and created honorifics to display for Knights of the Realm. However, we can easily watch this fall apart anytime we try to view the character's name outside of the character window. The character's honorific in this case is driven by flavorization. Despite in lore the character has given up all real titles and nobility, he is still titled on the basis of his lineage. A quick look through the character window file and we can see the problem. The devs have set up different character naming styles with visibility checks. Since this only happens in the character window, we aren't able to see any of this work anywhere else in the game. Thankfully, the devs have already put in the work for the other main function that uses regular script, scripted GUI. Scripted GUI main use is a Boolean function, checking if it is true or false. We will write it out just as shown here. Get scripted GUI with our SGUI script name wrapped, the type of check we are doing. The main ones for use is valid or is shown as used here. We will then create scopes for script out of the UI data. The root will be GUI scope.setRoot. Here the character data is available, so they went ahead and used makeScope for the root. There is also an add scope function that we can use under the GUI scope, but that will be a question for the co-op. We will also need to use .n to finish off the function. We can then use the mod's SGUI file to make sure everything there is in order. Just like custom loc, we will need to define a valid root scope type for the script, here being character again. Since we used isShown as our SGUI function, we will have to have that section in our script as well. Since we can use SGUI for buttons and effects, we can have one script name for each function of SGUI, like isValid, isShown, and the effects if needed. That is stepping too far into full GUI territory for today, however. Since the devs have already put in the work for checking proper knighthood in the SGUI, I believe we can just reuse it properly. Since we have a Boolean function, all we will want now is a function that swaps between flavorization and our unlanded knight title. For this, we can use select cstring or select localization. Both do similar things. Localization uses keys, while cstring uses directly written text. Here, cstring will be our best bet. As shown, the arguments will be a Boolean function, of which we can thankfully reuse the character window function. Let's double check and make sure the character data is available for this text so our root scope will be correct. We can see character here and here from vanilla. Then we will want to set our true text to be the knightly title Sir, which we can copy over as well. Make sure your strings for select cstring is wrapped by apostrophes. For our false function, flavorization covers the tier text for this file. You can see the use of $signs which notify that the tier is replaced with other texts, so we can copy that string into our false function. From here, all we will need to do is use this function and replace the tier text for each key here. These keys will be used for every getName function in game, so as long as we cover this file, there will be no spot in game that won't see it. Back to our modded game, we could pull up our knight and find that every instance has been properly changed to use his knight title. By correctly using our data functions and a little research into the vanilla files, we can skip needing to change UI altogether, putting ourselves ahead of the curve. So finally, I will bring up my main mod, Name Packs Expanded, and let you know how I replace every character name to be correct. What you need to do is And once you have about 1 million localization keys, you will find that sometimes loc keys will somehow overlap each other, plunging you into deep depression. Or you could just use SGUI and do the same thing we did with AGOT. I would like to thank you for listening to my ramblings. The important thing is, each Jomini game has a dedicated co-op to ask questions about localization and data functions. I am available in each Jomini co-op for questioning. For Modcon, I have created a batch of loc fixes and tricks for a couple of popular mods for CK3. I will now be taking questions from Modcon chat that I can hopefully answer today. Thanks for watching!